soon. She's running a little bit late, and we have some parts of the program to go before her. You know, I was thinking the day after the election that, you know, maybe everybody would be so fatigued by the run-up to the midterms that this subject would be of very little interest, because we just, you know, didn't want to hear anymore. But given what we saw, what happened in Georgia and Florida and some of these other places, we know that voter suppression and efforts to keep people from the polls in certain places is still alive and well. So I think that having this discussion today is still very pertinent and obviously something that's going to be probably years worth of work for activists and members of the League. To that point, the president of the California League sent out a letter this week to all of the local leagues, and I want to go ahead and read that to you because it really speaks to some of the reasons why we're here today. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so she writes, to League members throughout California, we have come through one of the most toxic election cycles in memory. As this is being written, the outcome is unknown, but we do know one thing, that the morning after, as exhausted and disheartened as we may feel, we will need to challenge ourselves to make the difficult shift of renewed commitment to each other for the valuable work we do as members of the League of Women Voters. Many in our nation are losing faith in the foundations of our democracy. For us as members of the League, we know it is our mission to make a difference in our communities by protecting our democracy and empowering our voters. We are needed more than ever to guide and educate and to help rebuild trust in our institutions, just as we've been doing for nearly 100 years. Our incivility and volatile tribalism have been long in the making. Change will not happen overnight. But we are the ones we've been waiting for. As a trusted institution of civility and fairness, the League of Women Voters is well positioned to seize this opportunity to lead the healing of our collective civic psyche. Restoring respect and reason to our public dialogue will take all of us, each and every one of us. Toxic, hateful words have consequences. We can all do better. We need to hold each other accountable when we fall short. So where do we begin? Let's first take a step back, take a deep breath, and restore ourselves. Then we can come together as local leagues across the state to ponder our next step within our local communities. So consider starting at home. Engage in conversation with others. Work to understand different points of view, but come into those conversations out of curiosity, not hostility. Allow others the opportunity to fully make their point. Don't interrupt. And then work to engage more diverse voices in our conversations. And then we can reach out to our communities. Meet with your local elected officials, each and every one of them. Express your dismay at the current toxic climate and present the League as a problem-solving partner with them. Offer to serve on community committees to provide a well-reasoned point of view when modeling civil, respectful behavior. We can volunteer to support or to facilitate small group community forums with our elected leaders, forums that allow civil public conversations where participants seek to find common ground to solve community problems. And then ask how you can support our elected leaders' efforts at Civility. An example is assisting them at their council or board meetings to provide speaker slips and to guide the speakers as how to address the council or board. Taking small, powerful steps will change the tone in our communities and in time the nation, and it all begins with one small step. Sincerely, Helen Hutchinson, President, League of Women Voters of California. If anybody's interested, I did bring a few copies of this, but we've also posted it to our website at lwvlongbeach.org. And with that, I'll hand it over to Phyllis or Jane. Who's going to get Jane? We'll get today's program started.
So I want to speak a little bit about voter protection and mobilization, and specifically voter suppression, and what we realized or experienced during the midterm elections, and just a few examples of where we saw voter suppression around the country. I did do a little homework and realized that voter suppression's been around forever. And after the Civil War, some states introduced literacy tests and good character tests, said you had to pass those so that you were able to vote. And the purpose was to keep the African Americans who had just won the right to vote voting. And then with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, many of the southern states were put under federal oversight to try to limit some of that voter suppression. And then with the Supreme Court decision in 2013, that was revoked. And based on the thinking that the oversight was against the basic principles of federalism. So this year, I'm going to start in New Hampshire. So in New Hampshire, there was a lot of concern about voter suppression for students. A couple of laws were passed so that students had to show that they were residents, if you will. They had to pay for a driver's license in New Hampshire and get their automobile registered in New Hampshire. And that often came to about $300 or $400 to do both of those. It took a month to do those. They had to drive to the DMV, which is far away from wherever they happened to be on campus. They had to have a letter from their registrar on the campus saying they were living in the dormitory. So it was really considered to be a poll tax. And the thought was they're trying to stop the students from voting because they may vote in a direction not wanted by the leaders in the state. About 70,000 students were impacted. And a young man named Garrett Muscatel, who is a 20-year-old Dartmouth student from California, and he ran for the New Hampshire House of Representatives, and he won. And 35 other young people with the platform being that they were against these laws also won. So that was a big step for the state of New Hampshire with regard to student voter suppression. In Georgia, we all know what went on in Georgia, sort of the ground zero for voter suppression. 53,000 voters were put on hold because of a mismatch in their name. One county had rejected 10% of their absentee ballots because there was a mismatch in the name. And there was no conclusive winner for 10 days after the election. I heard this morning that Stacey Abrams did concede to Brian Kemp, but she is going to sue the state of Georgia because she believes the election results were based on misconduct, fraud, and irregularities that suffered sufficient to change or place in doubt the results. North Dakota. Last minute law in North Dakota requiring an ID with a full address. And many of the people, Native Americans who live on reservations, never had a full address on their ID. So several nonprofits and universities went to work immediately, producing new IDs, taking them, delivering them for free to all of these voters. About 3,000 Native Americans were impacted. They took new IDs to all of these voters, and in the end, only a dozen votes were not counted.
Oh. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Florida. There's so much to talk about in Florida, but we're just going to talk about Amendment 4. And the amendment that's dealing with citizens who had felony convictions and they were not allowed to vote. There was a process after morning Sylvia. There was a process where they could go in one-on-one to file for an exception for a reinstatement, but very generally not successful in being reinstated. 1.4 million Floridians were not allowed to vote, and of that 1.4 million, 1 out of every 5 African Americans in the state of Florida were not allowed to vote because of this law. The amendment was passed, and so now they're in the process of figuring out how to get these felons back into the register and able to vote in the next election. Sylvia just walked out, but Laura's here. Here in Long Beach, we had a proposal on the ballot for proposal DDD for electing a redistricting commission to draw district boundaries, because in our own city we had communities that were not well represented because of the way the boundaries were drawn. DDD was passed, and so now with a new redistricting committee, we're hopeful that all of our communities will have a stronger voice. So those are just a few examples of voter suppression we're dealing with even today and the past election. And so why it is so important that what we do in the League in trying to educate and engage our voters is so very important. Phyllis, Sylvia just went to the restroom, we have 3 folks who are gonna speak with us today. Phyllis O'Connor, who is one of the league, was a poll worker, and she's going to share with us some of the poll worker insights from this last election. Phyllis.
Hello. So what's a poll worker? There's 2 different types of poll workers at every election. There's the inspector, who's in charge, essentially the manager. They supervise and they provide assistance to the clerks, and then the clerks are the ones that sit there and man the rosters and do all the other work for polls. We poll workers get a small stipend, which is for 2018, the first increase since 2006. Inspectors receive $150, it was $100, and clerks are getting $100, up from $80. And you also get paid for training. It used to be $25 for attending a training session, now it's $40. So, you can't make a living there, but I have worked with people at the polls who are doing it because they need a little extra money. So it does help people to have a decent pay for poll workers. So how do you become a poll worker? It's not too hard. You have to be 18 years of age or older unless you're in an official student poll worker program. You have to be a resident of California. You have to be a U.S. citizen registered to vote or a legal permanent resident with a green card. You have to be available between the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. It's a long day. To set up the polls, provide assistance to the voters, and to conduct all the poll closing procedures. An individual who is a registered sex offender cannot volunteer to work at the polls. To become a poll worker, you can apply online, by mail to the county registrar's office, or in person with a paper application at the registrar's office on Imperial in Norwalk. Training. All poll workers it's not mandatory, but they should attend a 2-hour in-person training class, and they're held really throughout the area, so it's not difficult to find a class near you at a convenient time. You actually get an extra stipend for attending the class. There's also online training, but that is designed to supplement in-person training, not to substitute for it. So training is the in-person training. So my experience is that I've been a clerk and I've been an inspector for many elections, and I decided to let someone else enjoy the extra work, and I went back to being a clerk. And the extra work essentially means picking up the supplies sometime before the election, just overseeing the process during the day, and then at night with one other poll worker taking the voted ballots back to the registrar's designated location. You can't bring them back yourself for obvious reasons. There has to be another poll worker with you in the same car, and then bring them back. So the poll worker's day starts at whatever time you have to get up to get there about 6 o'clock at the polls. So that gives you an hour to set up. Usually enough, but usually in the mornings, a typical poll worker day, unless it's a really, really off something election, there's usually people outside the door at 7 o'clock. There certainly was for us, and we had a line outside the door at 7, and it took about 2 hours for there to be nobody there at all. Now, we did have 3 precincts in one room. It was the Greek Orthodox Church, so 3 different tables, 3 different precincts. So it was busy, the energy level was high, there was no rancor, no complaining, even when the lines got a little long. So it was a very civic and uplifting kind of experience to be a poll worker that day. So those who still vote in person and are familiar with the process where you come in, they look up your name in the roster, you sign in, then they check your address and the street address index, and then you go through the process of voting manually with the little punching a hole, punching a mark, and then bringing it back and dropping it in the box. That's all gonna change in 2020. So this was really the last, certainly the last statewide election where we're gonna be doing that. So we've gone from just penciling in or penning, writing, inking, filling in the circle, to using the Ink-a-Vote machine, and there's the Got Dot campaign with the Dalmatian. One of our meetings, we even brought the Dalmatian. And then the machine readable card, but not a whole lot has changed, but everything will change in 2020. And, well, I think probably our guest will be speaking to that, I'm not sure. But there will be changes in 2020, and we will continue to learn a lot about that. The main change is that instead of just going to your neighborhood polling place, you can visit any one of the polling centers in the county. And it's more electronic. And we'll know lots and lots about it, and the league has volunteered to be among the people to help educate the public on the new voting system. So let's see. So we noticed, poll workers, that we're getting many more people voting provisionally. They signed up, everything's fine, they come in, and typically the roster shows you sign up to vote by mail, and they say, no, we didn't. And we say, sorry, because you're on the list as having voted by mail. If you wanna vote in person instead, you have to vote provisionally, so that you can't vote twice. That's a typical response to preventing voter fraud. Not that we've ever seemed to have a problem with that. But, so people were especially accommodating and pleasant when were told they had to vote provisionally. I didn't hear anyone complain or saying, I don't have time and walking out. People were pretty good about voting provisionally. Probably what happened is that people.
He has a question.
Yes.
If they have to vote provisionally and they supposedly voted by mail, let's say they forgot they voted by mail or something and they voted twice, which one counts? I mean, how is that handled?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the vote by mail counts. The provisional is simply that. If there, it counts only if there's not another overriding. So if they didn't have any other ballot, the provisional would count.
Okay.
But if they had another ballot like a mail-in, the provisional would not count.
Somebody might have been confused, they weren't sure if they voted or not.
Yeah, so if they voted twice, the provisional is not counted.
Okay.
Yes?
I processed almost 100 provisionals in my precinct. And I believe it's because the DMV is automatically doing it, and some of these people had either renewed their license or gotten one of those smart licenses, and the DMV just did that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, but
And
that's
they
certainly.
said, yeah, I may have gotten an absentee ballot, but I wasn't expecting it, so I just thought it was probably another sample ballot, sample thing, and they didn't have anything to turn in, and they didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
And some were quite annoyed that they had been put on the vote by mail list.
Yeah, I think it has to do something with the DMV.
I believe
Yeah.
it was the DMV that did it, but I just couldn't believe the number that we had to process.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, that was my next section.
Sorry.
That's okay. Somebody had asked, well, so why do inspectors get paid more? And there's several reasons for that. The hours are longer, you have to visit a county facility and pick up the supplies, a few days before the election. You have to set up the polling place, and you have to supervise the other workers. So you have to be there first to open the door. You have to arrange with let's say a church or a school, wherever the polling place is. You have to make the personal contact with them, get the key and get it opened, and then be there when the other poll workers come and supervise the setup of the booths. You have to handle all the questions and problems that come up, and you have to arrange to stagger the dinner breaks and the lunch breaks. And that sounds onerous, but it's never been a problem. I mean, people are so accommodating. I think when you sign up to work at the polls, you're not signing up for, making the big bucks. You're signing up because it's your civic duty, you wanna help, and if you have to eat at 2 o'clock and you'd rather eat at 11:30, well, it's okay. So I've never had any nasty poll workers. I've been an inspector and a clerk, and I've never run across any untoward events. So the last item I was gonna mention is voter fraud. I've worked at the polls for at least 20 years, and I've never witnessed or even heard about any voter who tried to cast a fraudulent vote. Now, that's just personal experience, you know, there may be some. But it's probably possible for someone to come in, vote early in the morning rush, and then maybe put on a different hat, and come back late at night in the evening rush and vote again, using the name of somebody who they know isn't gonna be voting.
Don't they have to sign a roster?
Yes, they do.
To come in?
Right, so,
And
but if you
sign,
wanna,
they can't vote again.
but if you wanna sign in as John Jones, you know John Jones is your neighbor, and he's, well, not John, Joan Jones. So if you sign in as somebody who you know isn't gonna be voting, you could certainly do that. But you know, it would take an awful lot of coincidences for anything like that to affect that election.
I had heard a percentage of like 0.001, or it might be even more zeros than that, a percentage of intentional voter fraud in the whole United States. Have you heard that percentage, what it is?
Yeah, we did a program like this a couple years ago, and I looked into actual academic research on voter
Yeah.
fraud, and it was just,
Voter fraud is
It was like-
minuscule. I mean,
Yeah.
and it had more to do with mail-in voting as opposed to
Yeah.
on-site, which tends to be the object of like voter ID and these very suppression
Yeah.
measures, so it's probably.
And
less.
voter fraud, one at a time, randomly spread over the entire electorate, you know, how are you gonna influence an election that way? The main thing with voter fraud is if someone seizes the ballots, if someone, takes over the electronic, and we haven't had any instances of that, so voter fraud is kind of a straw dog, as it were.
Well, for one thing, in California, you do not have to present an ID except for if it's your first time voting. And so you don't have to prove you.
Right.
But, I have always, had people say, this person's dead, he's been dead 10 years. And I always, you know, make the notation, and they never get taken off the list. So there's lots of dead people that if you were aware, could get voted.
Well, my husband, after my husband died, he appeared on the list twice and then they took him off. So sometimes it happens, but you have to be persistent if you notice a name.
Yeah.
And there's a page where you write that.
Where you're
Of
supposed to
course,
write
yeah.
all that, I don't think
Forward
anybody
to
looks at that page.
Yeah, but it's possible for somebody to look at it. If they eventually get taken off,
Yeah.
it's not just because they say he hasn't voted in a while, because you can't do that in California.
Right.
Yes?
Is there a process present at this present time that your workers have to show the inspector that they have taken the training?
No? The training is not mandatory. It's highly recommended, but that you can't refuse to if you're an inspector, the poll worker doesn't have to prove that they've been to the training class. And I've certainly run into people like that when I've been an
Yes,
inspector.
that makes a mess. That's where
Well,
mistakes
it
are.
makes the inspector's job a little harder, but you know, the other poll workers are pretty nice people, and they help too. And usually, somebody is not doing it, usually if someone hasn't taken the training class, they're probably doing it because they need the extra cash. But once they get there with the other poll workers' help, they usually muddle through. Okay, so, yeah, that's about all I've got, but do you have any
Phyllis.
other questions?
Well, typically, what are the busiest times for people walking in?
First thing, usually we had a line outside at 7 when the polls opened, and we were busy for about 2 hours after that. There was always somebody in there voting. Also towards the end of the day. Maybe a little bulge at lunchtime, but not so much anymore. And of course, we have more people voting by mail. And in 2020, we're gonna have a whole new system, which we're gonna learn more about later. But it'll involve vote centers, and you can go to any vote center in the county, not just the one near you.
I have a general question, and I don't know if anyone can answer it, but is there any push for the way that we vote to be a national standard instead of every state doing something different? Is there any push for that, or will that be covered perhaps?
You know, I bet not,
Yeah.
because the states are very jealous of their prerogatives.
Yeah.
Ah.
You know, I mean, that's just my opinion, but it would be hard to get a consensus that we have to vote the same way as Alabama does, you know, it just. Maybe, I mean, as things get more electronic, probably so. But when we still have the state by
I was gonna
state,
say, you
county by
probably-
county system.
I believe it's in the Constitution that all states
Thank you.
elect all their elections. But don't quote me on it.
No, but I think that's true.
Everything that was in-
States are in charge, I mean, states could have a compact and agree to standards, but
Certainly, that
it
probably
doesn't usually happen in voting anyway.
Well, we at least have one day, that, you know, everybody's voting on November
Yes,
sixth.
yeah, that's certainly the federal, but, even, and that'll change too in 2020, there will be several days voting period. Okay, anybody have any experiences to share, any silly or inspiring voting experiences to share? Okay, I think that's it.
So you all know, this is Sylvia Moore with Common Cause, and she worked with us, or we worked with her on the DDD proposals. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. So while that's being put, hi, my name's Sylvia Moore. I'm Southern California organizer. Hi, Laura. With California Common Cause, we have another Laura Song
this is
from
it.
Equity for Cambodians who also
take
worked
care
with
of
us
it.
on the DDD
Doesn't matter what
campaign. I'm gonna, as I said before, I'm gonna talk go into a few minutes about the DDD campaign as an example of voter engagement, a micro example of voter engagement. And then secondly, I'm gonna talk about, our election protection program as, a tool to combat voter suppression. And, ensure everyone, casts a ballot, everyone eligible to cast a ballot. And then thirdly, I'm going to go into the voting solutions for all people, and that is the vote center model that is coming to Los Angeles County in 2020. And then in conjunction with that, the vote center placement project, which you all can participate in. So DDD, we were successful in passing, this will establish a independent redistricting commission in the city of Long Beach, so we're very proud of that. Common Cause has been a leader in redistricting reform in the state of California and around the country, and now on the local level. So we were instrumental in passing in 2011 the California State Redistricting Commission, which has basically as an independent body of, I believe, 15 commissioners that are chosen randomly, and well, people apply to it, and they actually draw congressional state lines. And this has taken redistricting out of the hands of politicians and into the hands of ordinary citizens like yourself. And so it has made our legislature a lot more competitive body and actually fairer when people are voting for their representatives. So we don't have politicians choosing their voters. We have voters actually choosing who they want to represent them. So in 2011, we got that passed. That's just one of the reforms that go to voting. The other reform we helped get passed is online voter registrations, as you all know. So now people can actually register to vote online instead of just, in addition to filling out paper forms, and so now people have the online option. The other thing that we were instrumental in was getting past the vote center, as I mentioned. The vote center model, so this is based on what Colorado has been doing for several years, where participating counties can opt into, instead of the traditional polling place where you go to, in your neighborhood, you can go to a full service vote center where you can register to vote conditionally, or you can actually cast a ballot or get language assistance, whatever, change your registration, whatever voting needs that you need. And you can go anywhere. It doesn't matter. You could be working in downtown Long Beach, but you may live in North Long Beach and you don't have the time to get back to your neighborhood to vote. You can vote at a vote center in downtown Long Beach. It's be right there. So that's a great reform that will really make voting a lot more accessible. The other thing that we helped in the voting sphere was to help pass automated voter registration, which makes voting registration even easier for people who it was harder to do so. And so you can now go to the DMV, and if you need to get a driver's license or a state ID, you can be automatically registered to vote, but you opt out of it. So you opting out of it, so in any business that you do with the DMV, you have that option to now register to vote. And so those are really the biggest things that we've done, Kamikaze has done in the recent years. So just getting back to actual civic engagement on a micro level. So getting back to the DDD campaign. So we were first approached by Councilmember Al Austin on redistricting reform. And so I went to the Long Beach City Council about a year and a half ago to talk about general redistricting reform and why it's important. And just the criteria that a good independent redistricting commission would have. You want to make sure that neighborhoods have interests, neighborhoods and districts have an interest, and other criteria. That I won't go into the details because I'm not the redistricting expert, but if you have more questions, I can certainly send information. But just generally, going to speak about this, and then later on, we were approached by the mayor to went to come up with a package of reforms, government reforms that included a redistricting commission, as well as an ethics commission, and a couple of other things that eventually became what I call the alphabet in measures, so AAA through ADD. So we eventually got to know Laura's group, Equity for Cambodians, and got to learn their story about their feelings of being disenfranchised in Long Beach, being broken up in several council districts and not really having a cohesive district to be able to choose a representative of their choice. And so eventually we got in touch with the League, and so our three groups worked with the mayor and Councilmember Austin to come up with a proposal for an independent redistricting commission. And so this eventually got onto the ballot. The council approved it for the ballot, and so then we turned into campaign mode. So I'm going really fast, but the details of, I'm sure you know the details of the actual commission. It's going to be 14 members, random draw. The members of the new ethics commission that just got passed will choose a portion of the members and so on. And that body will be in charge of choosing the lines for the council district lines in the next census, which is coming up in 2020. And so I would encourage all of you to consider applying to the commission. So we definitely need average citizens to give their input as to how cohesive districts whose interests are together would look as a fairer, more representative body for the city of Long Beach. So we, along with my colleagues, Nicholas Hydorn, who's our policy and legal director in Sacramento, he was involved in the Sacramento effort to get their redistricting commission, and he suggested that we do campaign kickoff. and as a means to get media attention and also to get the attention of voters. So having a kickoff is very important because you're rallying, it's mobilizing people, and it's like a positive rah event to get people excited about voting for your particular measure. And so myself, the league, Common Cause, the league, Equity for Cambodians, we got the May Center to host the event again. Thanks, Laura, for hosting us at the May Center, and we got a really good turnout. And we had Mayor Garcia there and Councilmember Austin to make really great remarks about why DDU is important. Laura and Charles Song from Equity for Cambodians and Mark Coleman also made remarks. So it was really great. I think got people really excited to vote for the measure. And then at the end, we had a picture and we had the signs with the DDU signs, and that's really good for going out in social media and so on. After that, we did do a phone or texting, phone texting campaign. So getting people to text their friends and phone their friends to vote for the measure. And so eventually we were successful. I think it passed by 59% of the vote. And so that's really, really awesome. I think it was the second most popular of the measures, so of passing. So that's like a micro civic engagement or voter engagement story. And there are many others, of course. For me, I think, just personally, I think voter engagement does start in the home and then also in schools. I think young people are unfairly targeted as apathetic because a lot of people, and not just young people, they're not, I don't think people are as encouraged to be politically active when they're younger unless you were in a political family. I think that, and again, this is speaking for myself, that civic education, we need to get really good civic education. We need to teach young people how to vote. Not just why voting is important, but how the process of actually doing it. You know, going into a polling location and here's the voter booth and here's the poll workers and the table and this is where you sign in and so on. Some schools do that, and that's great. They have a day where it's like a mock election where the students do a simulated election where they're actually doing the mechanics of actually voting. But I would like to see that as like every school do that. So any questions about that before I go on?
I found that Triple D was extremely restrictive to who could participate as a member of the commission. How much if you contributed, I mean, as an active citizen in Long Beach, I'm on commissions other than that, and that excluded me, how much I could contribute. That would exclude, there was so many, it was so detailed, and trying to explain it to going out and talking about the pros and cons was, I just skipped most of it because it was too, but you're going to get a limited, not a general representation of the people of Long Beach.
I hear you. I think, my understanding, we based the commission on the California state model, and I think the reason for having so many, we want to make sure that it's truly independent, and so I think it's the reason for some of the restrictions, and I'm hoping it's not too limiting. We want to cast as wide a net as possible, but I believe that the criteria were based on the California model. So, yes.
is there any effort to work with the school district at the upper levels to be sure that some information about this is included as a part of the regular curriculum?
So it just,
At the higher levels, not just counting on this teacher will do it and that teacher won't. If you got it, somehow a statement so that it was to be implemented in X class at X level, as a part of the curriculum. Is there any effort to do that?
I'm not aware of any, but, you know, it's certainly something maybe someone could push. But again, this is not Common Cause speaking, I'm just.
See that? Even in the past, it's always been up to each individual teacher. We did have a member on our board who was able to establish a relationship with a teacher in Jordan, and we were able to do mock elections there. But it's just so far getting individual teachers to say, yeah, come in and do this.
Well, maybe we
in
ought
my
to,
school.
maybe we ought to work a little bit more on, and I would be glad to.
I think you'd have to,
That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
I would think that, contacting at least one member of the school board would be your most effective way to get that built into some way into some of the curriculum in the high school level.
The league across the state, I was in charge of mock elections when I was on the state board. And so the San Fernando, the San Joaquin Valley is active, Monterey, Santa Cruz, San Jose, those areas have done really well, but it depends on the person who goes out and engages the school district. Santa Monica has done a good job. They had girls, 2 days before the mock election, they had actually guys, students building booths. So as people were going right by to the cafeteria, they said, what's that? Oh, well, we're building the voting booth. And you can vote Thursday, this is Tuesday, or whatever. And so they actually went where the students were, right when they were hungry, talked to them, and they had, you know, and it worked. So, the league actually has somebody on the state board, and we had a workshop at our convention that was well attended. And so people can attend from leagues who, I don't know, we don't do it. Then they can listen to somebody from, I don't know, Monterey, talk about, well, this is how we do it. And so it's hard to do if you don't have the right personality to market it to the kids and to the league members.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
At our polling place, I noticed that there were a number of young people sitting at the table where we signed in. And I asked, they were high school students, apparently they were getting extra credit or something for doing that. I don't know whether it was universal, but it certainly would be a great experience for kids, so it's something else maybe we can consider.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Just getting back to voter engagement, mostly what Common Cause's work is more about policy in terms of making voting more accessible. We don't have a specific program in our office actually going out to do a lot of voter registration and that kind of thing. I think we used to before I came. I've been in California Common Cause for about 3 years. But our work mostly goes into policy in terms of making voting more accessible, like the vote centers, and also when I'm gonna talk about election protection, which is what happens on election day. So I'm just gonna start going into that. So every general election, every 2 years, Common Cause has election protection programs. So we do the midterms and the general, where we deploy field poll monitors out into the field to monitor polling places. And this helps us determine where the problems are and what needs improvement in our voting systems. And so, so in 2016, that was my first election protection, and then we did so in 2018. So we usually only concentrate in Southern California. So in 2016 we did We had EP program in LA County and San Bernardino County, and a few poll monitors in Orange County. This year we expanded to San Diego and Riverside. For Northern California, Asian Americans Advancing for Justice has an EP program for Northern California, and any volunteers from that part of the state we sent to them to help with their program. Unfortunately, we just don't have the capacity to do, for us, for Common Cause, to do the entire state. So it's great that partner organizations like AAJ are available to do that, to take up that work in other parts of the state. So National Common Cause had a website called protectthevote.net, and we advertise this out in the community to recruit people to do be field volunteers. And so people would sign up at protectthevote.net, and they would get information about trainings in their area. And in conjunction with that, we worked with Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which is the organization that oversees all of the EP programs around the country that coalition partners such as ourselves was doing. So I don't know how many EP programs around the country we were doing specifically, but we were doing quite a few. I know Georgia, Common Cause Georgia had one, Common Cause Ohio, Common Cause Pennsylvania, Colorado, so we had a few. So Lawyers Committee partnered with us to help us get resources and also with recruitment. They also organized the legal call center volunteers and the legal field volunteers. So I don't know if you could go.
You wanna go?
Yeah.
And stop.
Yeah. So this is just the training PowerPoint that we used. So keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. So so basically we had two parts of the program. So we had our hotline call center, which is based in downtown Los Angeles, and that was made up of volunteer legal professionals, so mostly attorneys, but some, I'm sure there were some paralegals. We had some law students as well in a satellite call center at UCLA. So the call center, so they would field calls from all around the state and all around the country from voters who have problems at the polls, and these voters would be calling 1-866-OUR-VOTE, which is the main English-speaking hotline. Other organizations for second language speakers like AAJ had their own hotlines, or NALEO had a Spanish hotline as well. And these volunteers would take a call from a voter, ask what the problem was, relay that to their call captains, so those captains could call whatever county elections officials they needed to call to get someone out there to fix the problem. Could be a broken machine, it could be a rude poll worker, could be a lot of an unusual amount of people voting provisionally, people being improperly asked for ID, and so on, any number of things. And then the call center volunteers would input this information in a database called Our Vote Live, and this database would collect the incidents based on county, based on what type of incidents, so whether it's ballot issues, machine issues, or intimidation challenge issues. And that's all going to be referred back to later for every election protection program around the country to compile reports, which will go inform later policy solutions to voting system problems that still need to be improved too. So in conjunction with the call center, we also had the field program, as I mentioned before. So California Common Cause oversaw the field program, so we had about 300 to 400 field volunteers over the 4 counties, so LA, Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange, and San Diego, over the 5 counties. And as well as a smaller component of legal field volunteers, so legal professionals who were not in the call center, but who were actually out in the field doing poll monitoring. And so that was Lawyers Committee recruited those folks. And so the field volunteers, we would train them, and this is part of the training program. So we had several in-person trainings in LA County, Orange County, and San Diego, and one San Bernardino County training. We also had a webinar for folks that couldn't do the in-person training. So, so the field volunteers would be trained. We would give them at least 2 poll assignments. We decided to have them do the morning shift or the night shift because we found that a lot of the problems that you see are either in the morning as the poll workers are opening up the polling place, poll workers don't show up, or they don't have enough people, or they find out that the machines aren't working, or at the end of the day when they're running out of ballots, or they're closing up maybe a few minutes too early, or there's a very, very, very long line and people are being told it's like 7:58 and people are being told, no, you can't vote, things like that. So the poll monitors are basically our eyes and ears on the ground to report problems as they're happening. And they call into the call center captains, which we staffed, to report problems as they happen. And then we call county elections officials to tell them what's happening at a particular polling place to get a troubleshooter out. So there were, I mentioned some problems, but I can give you specific interesting issue that I got was at a Whittier polling place. I had a volunteer call me that said that there was a school board member actively campaigning inside the polling place. Like, okay, this is a new one. And she was understandably very angry about it. But, and this got into the local media. So, so you hear about, candidates going in and trying to give food to poll workers. They're not supposed to do that. I think 2 years ago we had a report of there was a shooting near a poll site. And so there was a lot of police activity then, so that was interesting. We get a lot of complaints of people wearing shirts that have slogans that are inappropriate, or just was mentioned about the poll worker training, like a lot of calls about poll workers not really knowing the law very well, or turning away eligible voters who actually are eligible to vote, and so on. Lots of reports of broken machines this time. That was quite a common one. So we've got the field and the hotline together. They're working together, and so as I said, all this data goes into Our Vote Live and will help to inform later legislation. So an example of this is the automated voter bill that actually came out of what happened a few years ago in an election where people were finding that they were not on the voter roster when in fact they were registered, and that problem was linked to problems that originated in the DMV's office. What else can I say about EP? I think that's pretty much pretty much it. That's like a big thing that we do. An example of voter, maybe not so much engagement, but voter to. Yeah.
So for those of us that don't know Common Cause as an organization, you are a private nonprofit organization that does this work, or are you in any way linked to any state organization or anything like that? So I can understand.
We're a national nonprofit, so we're nonpartisan. That's the other thing I wanted to mention, nonpartisan. So our EP work is nonpartisan, and we make it clear to volunteers that when they're out there in the field, they have to maintain nonpartisan positions. So, not wearing any kind of campaign buttons while they're out in the field, not discussing politics with anyone. We work with legislators who have good government democracy reform bills that we feel that supports our principles. And our principles are basically good government, democracy, making sure that everybody's voice is heard. Question right here.
Do you have a way, after you run the program, that you can collate everything that happened and summarize it to the ROV, or do you hash
Do you have
out
a
what
way-
happened and what are the types of problems? How
Do you have a way to summarize?
bring that back into the system?
Yeah, so the Our Vote Live system, which Lawyers Committee runs, so as I was mentioning, so all the call center volunteers and the call center captains are inputting all the incidents that happen, and so that will be compiled in the various reports that EP programs around the country will talk about in what happened in their particular areas or their states.
I guess I'm interested in how, so let's say you come up with a summary for a given area. How does the engagement with the election bureau of that place, how does that get formalized, or do you, I'm here from Orange County and we have a community elections working group, and so we take those types of reports and actually are on an active committee with the ROV.
Yeah.
You can have a big report.
Yeah, we do share it with county officials, and yeah, if that's what you mean, yes, we will be sharing.
Are they obligated to address any of the things?
It's just information for them to take, to take in, and it's also for us to form policy recommendations to county officials and to legislators. That's how we use it, yeah.
So calls that come into the call center or problems that your field workers observe, are you just collecting information to inform policymakers later on, or do you actively get involved in fixing that problem that's being reported, or is it up to the poll workers to take care of it? Like the lady who came in was campaigning.
It was a guy, but
It was a guy.
yeah. So we call in, we're actually calling in as calls come in, problems come in, so we're calling county elections officials at the same time that this is happening at this and such polling places. We want the volunteers to get, so we ask them the address of the polling place, the name of the polling place, even the precinct number, and then that's the information we'll tell county officials. There's a program machine at such and such school, can you go down there and take care of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer this, but what I don't understand is when ballots get counted. Because so I always vote in person, so I can get my little thing. And but so I'm pretty sure my votes are counted, but it seems to me like the people that do it online or the people that do it by mail, and then the provisional things, maybe it's just Georgia and Florida that don't count all their votes, and then the idea maybe we won't count any of the soldiers' votes. It seems to me like all that stuff ought to be counted anyway, and not just say, well, that got won, so we'll just leave those other things free. We'll just won't count them. I don't get how that happened.
Well, again, it's every state has their
Right, well,
own
in
system.
California, for
Yeah.
example.
So the good news is that we live in California.
Yeah, I
So,
do.
so California is actually more forward in terms of improving voting and not trying to suppress people
Right.
and so on. So that's good. So in terms of counting the votes, I mean, and you mentioned online, people are not voting online, they're filling your ballot. I think a lot of people are concerned about provisional voting and whether that will be counted. And every provisional ballot is reviewed by the county elections office. And like 90% of those will be counted. So it's a very good one.
What are they counting?
They're being counted now. It takes a long time.
Right, that's what I think too.
Why settle the,
But we see
who
all
won?
these TV things saying, well, this person won, they got 86% of the vote, of course, we didn't count these other votes. That's what I don't get about this.
Well, that's a media issue.
But that is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I wish the media wouldn't call, elections until they're counted.
Until every vote is counted.
They do that, yes.
Does it matter what the media calls or what the candidates call, whether they say they won or lost or what? What really matters is when all the votes are finally in, and that, my understanding is that could take a month in some cases. Is that true?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you have a really, really close race, and I mean, it just shows that unfortunately, a lot of our voting systems are still kind of antiquated. I mean, that's just the reality.
Okay,
of
what I'm saying though,
things.
you mail your vote in from some county that's far away or something. Does your vote count even if it gets in after some deadline because the post office is running late or the election officials?
It's a
The
postmark.
postmark.
They ever
Yeah,
check
once-
that up? No, I don't mean when you voted, I mean,
As long as it's postmarked on election day, it will be counted,
even if it takes them a month to do it,
even if it takes, yeah,
all right.
so.
That's why you
Because
don't.
Trump doesn't seem to understand that. If it didn't get counted, within 10 hours, he says it's fraudulent. I don't buy it.
Yeah,
Since you're nationwide, right?
yeah.
So other than election day, for protecting elections, you said you're involved in, trying to influence or, get involved in legislation. So for an example, like Kansas, where at the last minute they moved in one town, a polling spot, like 15 miles out of town. How could we support you to support legislation so things like that don't occur?
Well, I don't, we have a common cause, Kansas. What you can do on the federal level, so, again, this is all state, but I think what the federal government could do is, they can, I think the Voting Rights Act, what the Supreme Court did in gutting the Voting Rights Act really did a lot of damage. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these voting suppression methods crop up. And, Chief Justice Roberts said, oh, we don't have a problem anymore. That's ridiculous. I mean, obviously the evidence now is that when you don't have a spotlight, when you have a check on this, people will try to make sure that their opponents don't vote. So we have to ensure that the Voting Rights Act, I mean, that's something that you can call your congressional and senators about, is we need to address the Voting Rights Act and get it back to where it was before so we could stop these problems nationwide.
The league at the national level actually has taken a position on restoring those parts of the Voting Rights Act, so we are also actively engaged in those efforts as well.
Yeah, that's great. And if you have relatives in Kansas or friends in Kansas, please let them know and tell them to get involved. That's my advice.
Does Common Cause get involved in lawsuits? Because I know the league sometimes does too.
Yeah, we do, particularly when it involves gerrymandering, which is, that's an issue that also goes to voting, but I know about a voting rights lawsuit. It's at this moment, maybe on the state level, but I'm not privy to that at the moment. Yeah.
How difficult is it currently for
do you find? I'm sorry.
How difficult has it been? I know for a while they were really, really hard pressed to get enough poll workers to actually staff all of the precincts.
You know, that's a good question. I just think I think what did help was allowing high school students to become poll workers, and also you don't have to be a citizen to be a poll worker. That helped a lot. So I just think it's just community engagement, community promotion again, to sell, to show people. And this is definitely where the league can come in. It's like every league chapters promote the importance of poll workers to our democracy. So yeah.
Are you going to be speaking about these voting centers?
Yeah, if no one has any more questions about EP, then I can go on to the vote centers. And then if you could, so this was, the vote center model was SB 450. And so now it's called the Vote Center, the VCA, Vote Center Act. And so, again, this was modeled on what Colorado has done for several years, which is, Colorado is a vote-by-mail state, and so every person there gets a vote-by-mail ballot, and then they can take their ballot to a vote center in wherever they are. So we got SB 450 passed, and now it's currently being implemented in currently several Northern California counties. And in this last midterm, those vote centers in those Northern California counties were online. So a vote center can be a place where it could be a school, it could be a library, it could be what you was formerly a poll site, but is now a center that anybody can go cast a ballot, register to vote, change their registration, get assistance to vote. It's a full service voting center, and they're gonna be located in places all around the county, and anybody can go there, and it doesn't matter whether you live in that neighborhood where that vote center is located. You can cast your ballot there.
How long are they open?
It's gonna be like 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on election day, but 11 days before election day.
Okay.
So you can early vote at the vote centers as well. So good question.
Each precinct has their own ballot, or certainly each area where there's smaller districts, like a city council district, but you're also doing a Congress and whatever, in governor. And so how can you tailor, if we're voting in downtown Los Angeles instead of Long Beach, how do I get to my precinct?
So so when I went to early vote actually this year, which was my first time doing that, and it was at West LA College, and like I had to wait 3.5 hours in line. That was an ordeal, but. So they actually had computers where the county elections workers they have everything basically there in a database, and they had me, I don't know if this is gonna be how it's gonna be in 2020, I'm just saying that this is how they're able to pull up your, you give your name, and they're able to pull up your name and everything that you're voting on.
So your specific ballot will
yes.
be.
They're able to call up, and print out for you.
And then, so there is also a paper?
There's a paper, yes, there's gonna be so basically, so this is also, we're gonna be voting on new machines, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture of it, maybe some of you have seen it, but it's called VSAT, Voting Solutions for All People, and it's, this is something the county has been working for years on with all sorts of organizations putting in their input on how these machines should be designed. So if I could describe it, it's kind of like, if you can, it's bigger, it's not your paper voting booth, but it's like, it's kind of,
almost like a little desk.
Yeah, it looks like a desk, semicircular shaped, and there's a monitor, and you will pick your choices. Now it's electronic, but there's a paper receipt that you get at the end after you pick your choices. And you pick your choices, then make sure these are the choices that you want, and you say okay, and you get your paper receipt, and it will show you what your choices are. And then you can click OK, I'm ready to cast, and that's generally how it works. And so, and they've made it so that it's also accessible for voters with disabilities. So for the first time, voters with disabilities won't have to vote on a separate machine. Everybody's voting together, which is really great about this system. So that's so the Inca vote, that's going away the dodo. So these machines will be in the new vote centers. You know, if you're working, as I said, downtown Long Beach, or you just happen to be in downtown Long Beach and you're doing shopping or whatever, but you live in northern Long Beach, you can vote in downtown, or you can vote somewhere else, you know, and you have almost 2 weeks to do that, up until election day. So it's gonna revolutionize, I think, voting here. And Los Angeles County is, we're not going to, in 2020, other counties are gonna get all of their ballots in the mail, but Los Angeles is not going to do that in 2020. I believe that's gonna be later. But other counties are gonna have it so that everybody in their county gets a mail ballot where they can go to the vote center. But LA is gonna do it a little bit differently. So I wanted to talk about the vote center placement project. So this is gonna be, if Kimberly, if you could go to the flyer too, and then I have some copies of the flyer as well that if someone could pass out. Do you mind passing it? Thank you very much. So the vote center placement project is gonna be we're going to be holding community meetings all around the county between now and, we're going to be holding community meetings all around the county between now and January. And these meetings, we're inviting the public to come and suggest potential vote centers. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be a 30-minute presentation about what the vote center model is, how it's going to work, and then there's going to be a 1-hour open house where there's going to be 5 stations where people can go to a station. And so the first station is where you'll sign in, and you'll get fact sheets, translation requests are there, and so on. The second station is the VSAT station, where people will learn about the VSAT machine, as I described it, and actually try it out. And then third station is where people can actually comment on potential vote center locations. So let's say your polling place that you've been to for many years as a school or a library, and you think it would make a great place for a vote center. It's got good parking, it's close to transit, it's huge, you know. Whatever kinds of characteristics you think would make it a great vote center, you could, oh, sorry, that was the next station. That's station 4, okay, you could suggest a vote center. And you can, there's gonna be maps where you can actually put little stickies on where the vote center is, and then for potential sites. And then the other station I was mentioning, so the next station after that, you can comment on locations that other people have said would make good vote centers, or the county that elections officials themselves have identified as good places for vote centers. You can actually comment, and you can say, yeah, I think this place would make a vote center, or you don't, or no, I don't think this place would be a good place for vote center. And then you can list the reasons for that. And then the last station is gonna focus on, the characteristics of the particular community that, your particular community, where the vote centers are being, potentially located. So, each meeting is gonna be covering a specific area. So for instance, the meeting that's gonna be on December 5th is gonna focus on Long Beach, but surrounding communities as well. And,
That's the only one in Long Beach.
that is so far, yeah, this is the only one in Long Beach, but you can go to any community meeting that you wish. And the website, you can go to the link on the flyer and you find out where all the community meetings all around the county are being held and when. So I would encourage every one of you to attend, at least attend the meeting. If you can't, you can always go to the website again and you can actually go and fill out a form on potential vote center locations that you think would be really good. And so the county's gonna take all of this information and so this is gonna be the initial round of community meetings, and they're gonna actually take all the information and review it and decide where people think in this round the best locations are. And then they're gonna have another round of community meetings next summer to solidify locations. And then they're gonna choose about 1,000 vote centers for LA County eventually. So, yes.
Have local cities, including Long Beach, thought of, because libraries, I mean, all of them have good parking, they're easily accessible, has that been thought of, it just including all of the Long Beach libraries in that list?
You know, that's something that if you don't see a library that you think would be a good choice, definitely add it in. You can do that, you can certainly do that. I don't know specifically if any Long Beach libraries have been mentioned, but.
Because who would work, I mean, who is manning these sites? Are they being paid to do that? Is it volunteer?
It's gonna be poll workers.
It'll
yeah.
be poll
Yeah.
workers,
Mhm.
okay.
I'm
And they get
not
paid? I mean,
I'm not sure if they're gonna be, I don't know if they're gonna be a little bit higher, criteria for the poll workers that work at poll centers.
Yes, in Orange County, they are employees, they're temporary employees, but they're registrar voter employees. And we run a sort of pilot vote center thing throughout the county, so it is not volunteer poll workers, and they are trained a lot more because we put more people, only 1,000.
and the money's coming from the registrar's office?
Yes.
So it's
This
being
is
funded.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
funded.
it's funded, yeah.
But there
But
would
it
be,
still saves money overall compared to polling places.
Okay.
there'll be fewer vote centers than there are polling places today, is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, not all libraries are accessible. The second district, there's no parking. We're near the beach, so that sucks except for bus people. So that's why they need the input, because everybody's fantasy that lives in the rich parking efficient areas are assuming stuff that's not true.
This may be an end of program question, but the feasibility of all mail-in, like Oregon. So they all votes will be counted at once when it's all by mail.
So, what your question is again?
Have they been a study of how successful Oregon is on the mail-in only?
So, yeah, so all vote by mail states have seen a markedly significant increase in voter turnout.
Save a lot of money.
Yeah, yes.
Well, and Washington State has it as well, and they have ballot drop boxes, locked ballot drop boxes here and there throughout communities, and by mail. And they haven't had, polling places for several years.
Yeah, think of all money that we save.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very successful where this has been tried, so very, very excited that this is happening. Yes.
So where's the opposition to that coming from?
Yeah.
What is happening that the will isn't translated into the change?
Well, when I remember, there wasn't a ton of opposition to this. I think, there are people who are very committed to their polling place, and change is a little difficult for some people, but we haven't. I mean, it's a done deal now, so this is happening. But again, this is optional. Not all counties. Counties are not mandated to do vote centers. This is something that is counties can opt in to do. I think maybe those that aren't don't have plans to do it now are probably waiting to see how it works in the pilot counties. I mean, we have the 4 pilot counties in Northern California doing the vote centers now, so we'll get some valuable information from them about how it actually operated and worked, and can get the kinks out before other counties. In LA, we have 2 years to implement this. Well, like a year and a half now. A year now. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So, I'm gonna wait and see how it goes, but it sounds to me like there won't be anything really close to me. And, I'm wondering how this is gonna affect the kind of voter that you get. So, something like this might, discourage senior citizens, because it's further away from, the voting place that they had. And have you run across anybody who said that?
Okay, I just want to dispel some myths. So this is why we want input from the community as to where good locations will be. I mean, no centers have been chosen yet. So that's why we want input from you, for community members like you, to tell county elections officials, we think that this place would make a good vote center. And it could be the polling place where a particular group of seniors were voting all these years. That could make a good vote center. And that's why the county needs to hear from people, and until anything is set in stone. So.
Well, I think the point is that there's senior citizens everywhere, right? I don't think that they congregate. I don't know if there's a congregation of areas where senior citizens are located. So cutting down the number of polling places, I believe, will have an effect on senior citizens who want and like to go in person and now don't have anywhere close by. So even getting input is not gonna lessen the fact that there'll be less of them and less chances and less locations for them to have choices on,
Yeah,
right?
it seems to be
Sorry to
weighted
playing
towards
devil's advocate.
mobility. I'm gonna be shopping downtown, how convenient is that? That's somebody who's mobile. I don't mean I'm mobile, I have a car and all that, but I don't mean that kind of mobile. I mean, so it's, it seems to me that it's gonna affect who votes, and maybe that's good, because maybe more younger people and all of the adult people like that will vote.
Well, this is why eventually we'll get all mail-in balloting, so you don't actually have to go to a physical location. But it may mean that maybe they realize from community input that 1,000 centers is not enough. Maybe we need to up it to 1,500 or 2,000. That's why the input is important. So,
That requirement for center per square mile or something.
They did, yeah, they're discussing that at the state level, yes, yeah. Center per, how many centers need to be in a per square mile in this particular area. We have a question? No? Yeah.
I'd like to clarify something that Ann said. Do they count absentee ballots as they come in, or do they not wait until election day to count them? Can some of them be pre-counted?
They start processing.
That's like above my purview. I don't know, anyone who's worked as an inspector, can you?
Well, I can only speak to Orange County. In Orange County, they do tally them, or rather they tally but don't count it up, so nobody knows, but they automatically
They do
scan.
tally?
Yeah, because the 805 quote, the 805 thing is not
them in early. I don't even know if my
Well,
ballot's been
because
counted yet.
There, well, wait, I don't know if LA County has it, but we have, ocvote.com/verify, and you can just see if it gets.
Yeah.
So LA County does have, I know for
So you can
provisional.
find out.
Yeah, for provisional voter, you can go and find out.
But
that
all
your
those
vote has
first,
been counted.
election, returns that you get are all vote by mail. They're all, none of them in Orange County are from the actual,
That night you tally.
that night tally. I mean, from the polling place.
In LA, I'm sure they start processing them, as you say,
Yeah,
it's a processing. They may not have that.
But it's
I don't
against
know
the
why.
law for
Wait and take
anybody
money to the poll just to
to
see
have
what the vote doing.
totals,
Exactly.
but they certainly start processing them as they receive them, checking the signatures and everything. They can't possibly get anything in a couple of days if they don't.
That's another thing, my signature was probably umpteen years ago. And through the years, it's probably changed, so why are they so exacting to see that it's absolutely, how can they tell?
We don't have exact match in California. We don't have that.
But they do other places, and it's terrible.
Well, we don't have it here, so we don't have to worry about that.
But in California.
Yeah.
I Googled that question, and I'm not sure about this website that I'm on, but it says the first vote counts is California that are announced on election night are the vote by mail ballots that were processed and scanned the week before election day.
Oh, great.
Vote by mail ballots returned to polling places are not included in the election night results, because they must be processed, counted before they are scanned and counted.
Well, people should
Thanks for
probably
that.
do that, it should be.
So that's not the registrar's website, but, or maybe it is.
So we had I think one more question?
Well,
One more
no,
question.
Just to answer to that, yeah, that's the way it is in Orange County, and also,
Sounds like
we
it's
have
the same way.
increase over time that, vote by mail ballots are increasingly returned on election day at polling places. We have close to 70% of them end up there, so even though you can talk about, BBM is, it saves so much money, it's so great, we can do it early. There's something about election day, there's something about the solidity of handing it in. I mean, I ran a polling place in Orange County. I had not only, about 200, vote by mails from Orange County in, but I represented 15 other counties. People, it's really amazing how much people either hang on to their BBM ballot or something. So the registrars take all this into account. They have a whole exchange program, on getting that, that San Bernardino thing's gotta go to the ROV at San Bernardino. And, so those are realities that are increasing, and so even though, it's not like you can just decide top down, this is the most efficient way to do it, because there's just realities of how people work. And then we're talking about people, you're all here really interested in voting. There's a lot of people that are super paying for, or they feel like they're not part of the system, they feel disincluded, and they have a whole other dynamic of what makes them vote. So,
I was a poll worker for years, and I became discouraged at the amount of attendance at polls. It was sitting there all day long with 15 to 20 people coming in and voting.
Not this last
Not
time.
this time.
I
No,
tell you.
I ran out of
Yeah,
ballots
that's why I
3
wanted to go
times,
to the
yeah.
poll, and I think I was really.
Again, thank you for having me here. Again, I want to thank Jane and Kimberly from the region for being so involved in this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any time?
We have time.
We have time.
All right,
Thank
so
you, Pat.
Renee is going to speak to us a few minutes on the work that we do as the league and how we do voter education, some of the things that we do with regard to voter engagement, and a little bit about what that means as an elected official, the work that the league does and how that impacts the elected officials. So,
I was talking about the role of the relative to the candidate relative to the elected official, and relative to the people at large. And I think maybe I'll go in reverse order and talk first about the league's role relative to voting and all the citizens in the community. And I think the most important thing we do are the pros and cons that we go out to any organization or group that requests speakers and describe in simple words what each ballot measure does, what its effect will be on each of us, how much it will cost, and if it's approved, how that will change your life. And that is so, the community just so appreciates it. And we don't, we're trying to school ourselves on how to describe each ballot measure, because some of them are quite complex. And I was at a gathering the other day, having nothing to do with elections, and one man who was there said, "Oh, I recognize you spoke, thank you so much." And it's really important. And so that's the thing. And the other things we do, we're called on often to moderate candidates' talks, and people call on the league and ask us to do that because our reputation is we have integrity, we're honest, we will be fair, and and that can sometimes college like Cal State Long Beach or Cal State Dominguez Hills, they'll have an election on campus for campus things, and they'll call on the league to help them set it up. And so the league is really, I think, a remarkable concept. I contribute to all kinds of things, the Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center. They're each doing important things, but there's nothing like the League of Women Voters. And so as we are empowering people to vote with greater knowledge, and that's what when I go out and talk about pros and cons, and I say, all we want you to go away from here is having more information so that when you see all this stuff on television, or you get all this stuff in the mail, you can assess how much of it I can believe and how much is just fraud. And that's a service that is hard to come by. And so that's, I think, in a way, we are empowering voters, and there is no voter suppression because people are now informed enough to be able to vote rationally, and that's what we're at for. As a candidate, well, I want more women, young women, to seek public office. And what the league did for me, and I was a candidate back a number of years ago, for example, when I was elected to the city council in Long Beach in the 70s, I could probably count maybe 15 women in the entire state of California who were then serving on city councils. Today there are probably 700-800 women serving on city councils, but it was the league that was the training ground. If I had not been involved in the League of Women Voters and been sufficiently informed, I would never have thought to run for city council, for public office. And so the league is the training ground, and not so much today because there are many other places for, but certainly at the local level, which is presumably nonpartisan. At least you you don't have a political party providing the services that candidates need, so. But what the league forces a candidate to do is to understand an issue well enough to be able to know it in depth. When I ran for the city council, at that time, the league in Long Beach had been studying the Long Beach City Charter. And by the time I was ready to run for office, I knew that city charter inside and out, and was able, as an elected official, to realize one of the things I could do was then to pursue getting amendments and changes to the city charter, which was that thick and full of unreasonable information. And so the league has been, and I think still is, a really good training ground for getting particularly well-informed local elected officials. And that's what you want. When we talked about DDD, I would tell you that until now, the city council has done the redistricting. It's in the hands of the city council. And as honest and person as I think I am, with great integrity, I will tell you, because while I was on the city council, we had reason to redistrict. You don't want the city council doing that. And the temptation is just so great that even if you feel you're being fair, well, but you could take that street and I'll take this one and it'll be fair. But I think that was the most important thing on the ballot for Long Beach. One of the things I had as a member of the league was I had a resource of really able, at that time women, but people, when opportunities arise for appointments to commissions or committees, and the mayor may say, I'm going to be appointing somebody to the health department. People in your district who are particularly knowledgeable about one committee or another. And it gives you a really great opportunity to get people appointed to commissions who would otherwise probably not have that opportunity. And it's inevitable that if the mayor is recommending, he's going to recommend people he knows. And so you can, as an elected official, get more people involved because you know them and they've been helping you and they're informed, that otherwise wouldn't probably have an opportunity to do that. So the information that you get as a league member, I know at one point a friend of mine, a good league member when I was on the city council, was her college training and all her information was in city planning. And I could see to it that she got on the planning commission. And she made an enormous difference. And at that time, most anybody could have made a difference, but, one of the things, and I'm being finished up, but one of the, at that time, people who wanted to influence the council members or commissioners, like planning commissioners, at Thanksgiving time, I'd find a voucher for a free turkey. And I would turn it over to a charity. And she made a big deal out of it. She said, I don't need this turkey. I don't want people got trying to give me gifts. I'm a planning commissioner, and she focused on it, which was never had been focused on before. And so the league is a remarkable training ground for us, and an encouragement for us and for younger women to get involved in their local government, and it's a great opportunity for what we can help provide to the community at large. So keep at it. There's nothing like the league.
All right, well, that is our program for today. Thank you all for